Now, why would you want to learn more about the big basic barbell lifts? Well, obviously, the main purpose is that they are extremely efficient, meaning that they can hit a lot of different muscle groups to a very decent extent at the same time. So they are a time saver. They do a lot more with little time. They might not be the best exercise for each individual muscle, but by themselves, they allow you to hit so many different muscles that it makes your training a lot more efficient, okay? Second, if you are an athlete, well, the main benefit of those big barbell lifts, and they don't need to be sport specific, is simply that they improve the central nervous system's capacity to send a strong excitatory drive to your muscle. Now, that capacity is general. You don't need to copy your sports skill to have a benefit. Simply by training yourself to have a higher performance level on those big movements, you are developing your central capacity to send a strong signal. Stronger signal means that you will be able to more easily recruit the high threshold motor units, the fast twitch fibers. So you'll be able to build strength, size, and speed a lot more efficiently, right? So that's the main benefit. So as an athlete, you don't need to copy your sport movement. Just practice those big lifts, and it will give you the foundation to have the drive to benefit from sport-specific movements, which should be more in the power and agility range, okay? Now, that's for your benefit. Obviously, if you're a strength lifter, if you're a power lifter, a weightlifter, a strongman competitor, CrossFit athlete, well, you do need to have a decent level of performance on these lifts because your sport requires it, right? So what you need to do that is to learn the proper technique, and you need to learn how to correct your weaknesses, because these weaknesses, these weaker links in your chain, is ultimately what will limit the performance level you can reach.
Now, the reason we're doing this is because when we are assessing clients, when we first start training them and we're designing their training programs, the body proportions assessment is probably the most crucial assessment that we do with people. Now, the reason for that is because your body proportions is basically going to determine how you naturally move and how you naturally lift. And what this is going to do then is also determine where your natural weak points are, and then we can know from that what we need to focus on within your training. So just as an example, when you take someone with, say, who's got very long femurs or very long legs compared to their height, what we end up seeing then a lot of the time is that they are very posterior chain dominant, because even when they do a squat pattern, because the torso is so short, they have to lean forward a lot when they squat to keep the bar centered over their center of gravity. So then what happens is even their squats end up being quite hinge dominant squats. And then even when they're doing things throughout the day-to-day life, like picking things up off the floor or whatever it might be, they'll always tend to preferentially go for a hinge dominant pattern, because that is where they subconsciously feel that they're strongest. So now when you're programming for that person, you know straight away, just from that body proportions assessment, even without watching them lift or move, that it's very likely that you're going to have to do more anterior chain work, so essentially basically quad and ab work for them, and front-loaded squats that basically keep them more upright, because their preference is always going to be to move towards a more hinge dominant pattern. Just to go a bit further with that, again, when you get, say, like a long-legged individual, the other thing they can be more prone to is to have a strength deficit from side to side. Basically, the longer your limbs are, the easier it is to develop a deficit between either side. So then that means they're more prone to that. So that means with those individuals, then you end up programming more dumbbell-based work, more unilateral-based work into their program straight from the start. So right from the off, even without necessarily even meeting a person or watching them move, we can get a load of really crucial information about where their natural biases and weak points are going to be, just from some basic tape measurements that anyone can do in their home with a little bit of help.